I was actually talking to my dad about this concept yesterday, and he brought up the concept of, well, how do you eat an elephant? And he's used this a couple of times, but essentially, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And while I can understand that concept, it's sometimes really hard to tell which elephant you should eat. You know, like eating an elephant would be a really big endeavor. And no, I am not suggesting you should actually eat an elephant, just an analogy. But if you have, say, many elephants lying around you, you have to pick which ones were healthy when they died from the ones that were diseased when they died, so you don't end up getting ill yourself. If you can only support creators who provide value and make you think, please consider contributing to my Patreon page the next time you watch one of my videos. Hello everybody and welcome. Today I want to talk about laziness. Now, laziness is one of the concepts that affects us all, but the word is actually quite damaging, and I'm not entirely sure that we can fully escape it. And this is one of the reasons why I think this topic kind of needs to be discussed. But a couple days ago, I read an article about somebody who was discussing the concept of laziness. And this is a psychologist, like trained in school and things like that, actually teaches it. It's a professor. I believe it's a he. It could be a she. I'm not entirely sure. I didn't really look at the author's name. But essentially what this person was saying is that laziness doesn't exist, at least not for them. And I do think that's an important distinction. Laziness does not have to exist for everybody. For example, I don't believe that anybody else is lazy, but I do often find that I revert to calling myself lazy, which is not a good thing. But I think that's mostly because I was kind of brought up to believe that inaction is laziness and laziness is bad. So when I'm down on myself, I usually use terms like laziness or things like that, and I end up creating kind of a losing cycle for myself, which is not helpful. But what essentially this person was saying is that laziness is actually just a guise for a deeper issue. It looks like you're not being productive or acting appropriately because there's some underlying issue that hasn't been dealt with that is preventing you from moving forward. I was actually talking to my dad about this concept yesterday, and he brought up the concept of, well, how do you eat an elephant? And he's used this a couple of times, but essentially, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And while I can understand that concept, it's sometimes really hard to tell which elephant you should eat. Eating an elephant would be a really big endeavor. And no, I am not suggesting you should actually eat an elephant, just an analogy. But if you have, say, many elephants lying around you, you have to pick which ones were healthy when they died from the ones that were diseased when they died, so you don't end up getting ill yourself. And they don't really look that different. So this is kind of the concept that I've been dealing with and struggling with, and this is kind of what I was talking to him about as well. Is I'm like, yeah, I get that eating an elephant, it can only be done one bite at a time, but you also have to be careful in which elephant you choose. Not all of them are good for you. And then, of course, when you find an elephant that you're going to eat, when you find a project that you want to do that's challenging and hard and requires a lot of effort, now you have to figure out where to start. Do you start with the leg? Do you start with the head? Do you start with the back? Do you start somewhere in the middle? There is no set starting point. How do you cut it up? How do you, divvy the portions? How do you store it? All these questions that go along with that concept. And I know that maybe this doesn't translate well for some of you guys, but essentially it's kind of like, if you have a project, if you have a goal in mind and you want to accomplish it, you still have to find a starting point. And that's assuming that you've found a goal that you want to work toward in the first place and believe that it's a healthy one for you to pursue. So one of my biggest goals, and it's always interesting to me to find this to be one of my biggest goals, is I want to write a best-selling book. in a fiction slash sci-fi kind of category. Fiction, fantasy, sci-fi mixture kind of thing. And apparently that goal has stuck with me. I've been writing fiction since I was 7. I've also wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was 7. So, these are goals that I'm quite certain are big deals for me. But I've only started acting on them in the last 5-7 years or so. Pretty much since I started high school. A little bit before that too. I mean, I've kind of been working on developing some of these skills throughout my entire life, but I never really started working in a manner in which I could potentially earn a living off of them until fairly recently. And that's kind of a relative term as well. I've been working, once again, on and off in these particular things for a while. Kind of like YouTube. That's one manner in which I believe I can move my goals forward and share my knowledge of the world and find people that I want to connect with and so on. I can even go to my other YouTube channel and start posting individual chapters of my fiction and fantasy writing so that other people can hear them and enjoy them, because not everybody likes to read, so if you have the audio version it's more accessible. But essentially that's kind of where I am. I have these big goals, but the path in which to achieve them is not clear. So when it comes to writing a book, you have millions of options on how to start. You have hundreds and thousands of tips and tricks that you're supposed to follow in order to create the perfect first line and the perfect first page and the perfect characters and all these other things. But ultimately, you don't know if it's the right choice. You don't know if it's the right start. You don't know if it's the right direction. You just don't know. So you kind of have to move forward, and if it doesn't feel right, then you get kind of bogged down, and then you leave it alone for a while because you're like, I can't figure this out. And then you come back later and you're like, but this was so hard the first time. What made me think I could do this now? So it's not easy. This whole concept of laziness is quite damaging. You view yourself not working and go, well, I'm being lazy. And the truth is, you're either scared, don't have the proper equipment or knowledge base in order to accomplish the task, or there's some other issue going on internally that you need to work through in order to get past it. Laziness is a blanket term that actually holds you back. I don't think it's ever healthy to call somebody lazy, especially yourself, because laziness only actually creates more laziness. It doesn't actually spur somebody out of laziness. And usually, when you're in an unproductive state, pushing forward doesn't help, because then you just feel worse about yourself as you go, and you compound that feeling with every single action you take. And I think the reason for this is laziness is a negative emotion, and all negative emotions, their job is to slow you down so that you don't damage your own progress. I think this is why negative emotions are very low energy. You can never go backward in a goal, but you can slow down your progress so much you come to a stop. And that's what happens when you start adding negative emotions to whatever goals you have in there. And using terms like laziness is a prime example of a stopping force. The more you use it, the more sad and depressed you feel, and the lower your energy goes until you hit a complete standstill. Usually, when you hit that complete standstill, that's the rock bottom that people are talking about. There is no more movement. You are done. That's it. Obviously, you can come out of rock bottom, and usually the way that you do is you look up from this hole you've dug for yourself and you go, well, there's nowhere to go but up. And that's kind of how rock bottom works, is you get hit hard enough that you're like, well, hey, there's no more pain that can happen here. There's only up. I do know that Abraham Hicks says there is no, end to the negative spiral, just as there's no end to the positive spiral. But the difference is we each have certain points of pain or certain levels that we are unwilling to cross. So When you hit your rock bottom, it's specific to you. You know, it's not going to be the same as somebody else's rock bottom. For example, you could have some traumatic event happen that scares you so much that you just are shocked out of your negativity. Or you can lose everything in your life and, you know, hit that rock bottom state and then start moving back up. But you can also lose everything in your life, live as a homeless person for years, and then eventually just get sick of it and be like, you know what, I actually want to do something else. And that's not to say that homeless people are lazy or in rock bottom or anything like this. It's just that is an option. Personally, I know that there are many different types of people who are homeless. There are many different types of people who are wealthy. You know, there are many different types of people across the board. So labeling any group in one way is just kind of crazy. It is not helpful either. And labeling somebody as inadequate or incompetent doesn't help either, because you're actually creating the reality that you're stating. Like, if you call your son or daughter lazy, especially to their face, you're actually prompting more laziness within them, because you no longer believe in them. They already are struggling to believe in themselves, so you're compounding the issue. Now they're like, the whole world is against me. What are the chances I'll succeed now? This is a very damaging perspective. So I'm going to link the article in the description for you guys to read if you would like to. I could probably go into more depth on this concept later, but I definitely think it's important for you to recognize that when concepts like laziness come up in your life, it's an indicator that you need to re-examine what's going on. Whether you're pointing to laziness in somebody else, or you are judging yourself for laziness, or somebody's even calling you lazy. You know, that is an indicator that something else is going on and that some reevaluation is needed. If it is somebody else's laziness, then you need to start looking for potential problem areas in their life, especially if this is somebody you care about, and try to help them work through it. You cannot make them. This is one of the most frustrating things about personal development. You cannot make somebody change. They have to want to change. But you can start looking for potential indicators of where they are and what's going on. I've recently come to some new discoveries with some people that I'm close to, and I was amazed that I missed the signs for so long. Like, it had been such a long time that we'd been living in this state, and then all of a sudden I was just like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And I think part of the reason I missed it was the person wasn't acting that differently. But the distance between us was getting more intense. So I was like, well, what exactly is going on there? We had a long talk, and I think we found some solutions, some answers, and some lessons and stuff in there. It was quite interesting. I'm not going to share the details with you, but it's quite cool when you actually have this moment of discovery. So I encourage you to start looking, you know, start talking to that person and be like, hey, can I help you? Can we work through this? You know, let's look at what's going on in your life. One of the most important things that you need to do in this particular circumstance, though, is you have to remove judgment. And this is not an easy thing to do, but you have to essentially back off from your perspective. You have to allow any result to be okay, and you have to allow any belief system, structure, or concept to be okay. And only from that perspective can change actually happen in a healthy way and in a true, honest way. So, you know, I know it's not easy. You just have to kind of allow your mind to expand and open to somebody else's perspective entirely. That's going to come only with practice. I know it is not always easy to let go of judgments, but it is extremely helpful to do so. So I encourage you to do that. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope maybe this has given you some new perspectives and some new ideas, and maybe even provided some relief. I think that would be fantastic. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to click the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell so you are updated when new videos are posted. And if you have any questions, ideas for new videos, or issues or comments that you want to discuss, if you want to mention more about this kind of concept or your own thoughts, leave them in the comments and I will do my best to respond. It's fantastic to start conversations after concepts like this are brought up, so feel free to do that in the comments as well. I will be deleting negative comments though, so you're forewarned now. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Talk to you again soon. Bye.